Well, hello and welcome to this very special and exclusive conversation that we're bringing to you here on CNN News 18. This is coming in from the aviation space. Now, time and again, we've spoken about the dynamics of the Indian aviation space. It is a highly competitive space, newer players trying to get in, but more or less we're seeing a duopoly of sorts between the major players. Is that a good thing going forward? We're going to talk about one major player as far as the Indian aviation space is concerned, and that's IndiGo. I have with me the CEO of IndiGo, Pieter Elbers, joining us. Peter, always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Likewise, thanks for having me in the studio today.
Thank you for hosting us, is what I should be saying. But Peter, let's begin with the results that have just come in. A very strong quarter for IndiGo in seasonally what is seen as not great numbers across. How do you see the numbers and how much of that becomes a momentum going forward?
No, thank you. Indeed, the numbers we have released last Friday, being profitable in the second quarter of the year, which, as you rightfully so point out, is seasonally a weaker one. It was 5 years ago that we were profitable for the last time. So the first, I would say, thing is, in the last 5 years, we didn't make it profitable in the first quarter. Today we realized it. That's one. Second point is, this is the fourth consecutive quarter of profitability, which means we've completed a full cycle of 4 consecutive quarters of profitability, which is very important. You know, we came out of COVID, we started to recover. So for me, actually, the fact that we're achieving these numbers is a testament both to the vibrant and growing Indian market on the one hand side, and an effective execution of our strategy on the other hand side.
You know, Peter, we've spoken multiple times in the past, and one of the last interactions you said that you shouldn't compare IndiGo to the domestic peers, but you should compare it to global airlines. Why do you say so?
You know, if we look where we are, we're sitting and operating in the world's most populous nation. We're operating in what is soon to be the third largest economy in the world. We're operating in what is soon to be, actually today already it is, but it will be even more so, one of the largest aviation markets in the world. Yeah. So when we look at IndiGo, I think we should have a different view on that. And we want to build an airline not only for domestic India, we want to build an airline which has a reach which is matching the size and the potential and the opportunity India has to offer. And we're in fact doing that. So our international exposure is showing that. And therefore, yes, I made that remark. Look at the top airlines in the world, and today IndiGo is number 7 or number 8 in terms of daily departures in the world. We will be touching this year, and we're well on track for that. We'll be touching 100 million customers in 1 year. That is something which is on a global scale. There's not more than a single-digit number of airlines having that, and IndiGo is one of them, and we're proud to be the Indian carrier in that top league in the world.
So, Peter, I want to discuss a few consumer-specific issues first before we move on to in terms of the big orders and timelines. There has been a lot of chatter in terms of the fuel charge that IndiGo announced. Now, a lot of passengers are not very happy about it. Could you help us understand what's the rationale? How much more is a passenger now supposed to pay if they take an IndiGo flight?
Yeah. No, I think there's a natural correlation between the prices of fuel and the prices of tickets. And when the fuel price goes up on a global scale and people fuel up their cars, they're going to pay more for fueling up their cars. If you heat your houses, you're going to pay more. For airlines, there's always a sort of ticket price. But when fuel prices move up to a certain level, there comes a point in time that, in fact, you want to make transparent to your customers. So it's all about transparency. Yeah. When you want to make transparent, hey, fuel prices have gone up, we have to pass on part of that to the consumers. And we want to create a healthy Indian aviation. And in your introduction, you just mentioned the Indian market has seen its ups and its downs. And I think what's important is that we create a structure for India which is more stable, more predictable. And with that, these fuel surcharges, which are there in other parts of the world as well, are part of it. And when the price will go down, these fuel surcharges will disappear. When the price goes up, we may even evaluate it. So that's I guess, the dynamic which comes at hand.
Okay, so you're saying it's still dynamic, and of course, a lot of factors play in as far as the end cost for the customer, the ATF, and others, and that keeps changing. The other criticism that has come from a lot of passengers is that many airlines like IndiGo are forcing for a web check-in, which ends up resulting in you having to pay for a seat? Why are there no free seats available? Would you want to clarify what is it? Is it mandatory, or is it just something that is passed on for convenience?
No, I think there has been a bit of confusion, and candidly, and I think we should be always open to improve ourselves.
Yeah.
There were some messaging which was suggesting certain elements. So we are changing those messaging, and I think it's perfectly fair to do that. I think any airline and any company, IndiGo included, should always be open for those suggestions and changing that. So we are changing it. We are actually having a lot of seats which are just there free of charge. But where we should have been more clear, and where we are more clear now, is indicating, okay, that means we will allocate that seat to you. Yeah. And again, we're changing that. We come out of a situation in COVID where there was a lot of mandatory messaging and reporting, and we're still optimizing and fine-tuning that reporting. So we are addressing the issue. We have taken already some measures, and from here we move forward. And again, for us, transparency and clarity to our customers is very important.
Okay. Peter, thank you for that clarity and also being so honest, trying to keep that route of transparency open. I want to now move on to, in terms of the orders that we've seen by the airline and how that will add to not just the network and fleet, but also the larger vision of the airline itself. If you go back to June of this year, we saw a mammoth order that was placed. That was not just the biggest for IndiGo, but one of the largest that we'd seen in the aviation history itself. Over 500 aircrafts, no one really remembers.
It's a great moment for India, isn't it?
Headline this. Of course, it's a great moment for India. So I want to understand two things. The timing of when that order finalized for you, what does the timeline look for you? And how do you see that adding to the vision of IndiGo going forward?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And first, indeed, I mean, the same excitement in which you are just addressing this topic, I had there myself, and even internally I shared. You know, there's a few, I'm working in aviation for 31 years, and there's a few moments, I guess, in your career which you would never forget, and this is obviously one of them. And there to sign on behalf of IndiGo, the leading airline in India, to sign the largest order which was actually done in aviation history for a single plane order, that's a great thing. What's actually more important even is the vision which is behind. And we started to roll out a little over a year ago our strategy, and we shared that before, towards new heights and across new frontiers. And both elements, towards new heights and across new frontiers, is in fact what we are doing. So what we wanted to create with this order is a long-term perspective. Aviation is all about long-term perspective. Sure. So we had, at that point in time, we still had a little short of 500 planes on order to be delivered between actually that moment and the end of the decade. True. But since we wanted to build a longer term vision, and when we speak with airports, when we speak with the government, when we speak with other stakeholders, we actually want to show that, you know, we're going to build something here in India which is part of the vision for India itself. Yeah. And India will become the third largest economy in the world soon. Yeah. Aviation is an integral part of that. The government is a strong supporter of building also India into an aviation hub. And if we want to have good discussions with airports alike and say, you know, we're not building something for the next few years, we're building something for the long-term future. So this fleet order now brings the outstanding fleet order for IndiGo at a total of 970 as per today. For the coming years, each and every week, a new plane is coming in, and that helps us to build that connectivity and build India into an aviation hub, and helps planning for infrastructure, helps planning for ourselves. How much pilots do we need? How much cabin crew do we need? What mechanics do we need? What cooperations with some of the OEMs do we need? And we can now all start building that on like a 10-year time frame. And all these successful aviation powerhouses in the world always were driven from a long-term vision. What's happening in the Gulf, what's happened in the US, what's happened in China, and I think now this is India's time. So we should build, and I think we have today a set of stakeholders guided by the government policy and philosophy of building that, and therefore this order fitted in very well.
Taking on from what you said, I have two questions that I want to understand. One, when you place such a mammoth order, the very direct concerns is what is the kind of human resource that you have to fulfill the kind of aircraft order that you've placed, just in terms of your pilots and crew and others. What is the thinking within that? You said you have a 970 as far as the pending order is concerned. Do you have enough to cater to those aircrafts?
Yeah, I mean, these 970, which is a fantastic number, is coming in, let's say, in the next decade plus.
Sure.
So we spread it out. What is important, I think, there, again, India's demographic dividend
Sure.
is helping us.
Yeah.
So there's a huge young population who's looking for jobs and growth
Yes.
and career development. And you know, I can see for that we have the largest share of female pilots. It's great,
Yes.
15% at IndiGo is female. That's the highest in
Yes.
the world. We should be very proud of that. We have cabin crew coming from all over the nation, now working from 13 different bases. But the same would go, I think, for the IT side. The whole world is coming to India to develop IT.
True.
So we should have the best one in town because we live here.
Yes.
This is where we are.
True.
So we're building actually that infrastructure. So we have our own training center. We're building our collaboration with some of the other manufacturers. We're building more of the IT resources. And even this very office here is part of that future vision in building it.
But Peter, you know, every time we speak about this mammoth aircraft order, also what you need to understand is the recurrent issues that still continue. For example, engine issues with P&W, with Pratt & Whitney. Last I checked, there were about 40 aircraft that were grounded, but with the winter schedule now coming up and now that we have a clarity of schedule and timing, is that number going to increase in terms of the grounded aircraft?
No, you should, actually what we try to do is all the time to have a, I would say, operational short-term view on the one hand side and a strategic objective on the other hand side. So the mammoth order we were speaking about is clearly our strategic direction.
Sure.
So despite all the short-term challenges we're having, we did not and we will not deviate from our ambition to double in size by the end of the decade.
Sure.
So by 2030, IndiGo will be double the size of what it is today. And we should be able to achieve that basis the order we're having. At the same time, we're having short-term challenges when it comes to the engines and the supply chain. I think we have always been very transparent and open to that. But what we have done actually, we have taken a whole list of mitigating measures. So our capacity guidance for this year was in the north of the mid-teens. We have achieved that in the first quarter. We did a 28% growth in the second quarter, and we announced that we're going to do roughly 25% growth in the third quarter. So that list of mitigating actions helps us actually to deliver on our short-term capacity guidance. So the long-term vision stands,
Sure.
we build. The short-term, we have a list of measures and we continue to build on those measures.
So is it 40 or is it going to be more?
Well, today it is in the 40-ish.
Okay.
With the latest information we're getting, it's likely to increase going forward. And again,
Okay.
we have been transparent on that
Sure.
last Friday in the investor call we had. But next to what is the precise number going to be,
Okay.
it is important how can we mitigate that impact. And therefore, I think we have developed now a track record with lease extensions, damp leases,
Yes.
wide body leases, new ATRs coming in. So we have a whole set of ways to deal with it. And we are confident that that strategy will work effectively for IndiGo going forward.
Okay. Peter, I also now want to understand as far as the winter schedule is concerned, over almost 50% if we see it's given to IndiGo. There is of course grounding of Go First as well. Have you seen the grounding of Go First as an opportunity?
You know, we tend to focus at IndiGo on what we can do for our customers and how we can build our airline. So, you know, I'm not looking around the entire day what's happening with our competitors and will they have more capacity or less capacity and what will happen. I think for, you know, Go First had its own set of challenges. And for us, it's important to serve the Indian consumer, to focus on that. As a matter of policy, I prefer not to react
Sure.
on sort of the companies itself. I think for the customers and of course their staff, that we have compassion with that situation, but we
Sure.
focus on what we can do with IndiGo.
Oh, I'm just looking at statistics, Peter. It's about 20 international flights across Central and Southeast Asia, Africa and the Middle East just in the past 6 months. There's some routes that have been resumed as well. You can correct me if I'm wrong, there are about a network of 32 international destinations. Could you help us understand in the breakup for domestic and international, what's next in the next 6 months?
No, I think your numbers are perfectly accurate, so no need to correct them. I think what we are doing actually, we're expanding both our domestic and international network. So today we are operating 83 domestic destinations, which is a fantastic number. India by IndiGo, and we have announced actually 2 more to be opened in the next few months. So I mean, Jaisalmer, we recently introduced Jaisalmer, Diu. So we have actually a lot of destinations, and I have a big map at my room here with points, and we keep on adding these points. So we keep on adding that domestic network to live up to our commitment, India by IndiGo. 83, soon 85. International, I think we were somewhat modest in our portfolio. We were somewhere in the mid-20s, low 20s. And as part, again here, as part of the growth of India and international connections and Indian consumers who want to go international, I mean, people tell, hey, Tbilisi, now I can go to Tbilisi. So we start to expand. So we've added Central Asia to that, which was new, Baku, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty. We've added Nairobi and we've added Jakarta. So suddenly we're no longer a domestic Indian carrier with also some flights into the Middle East, to becoming, I would say, a regional and even soon further expanded when the XLR comes in. So we build that international network. So 32 destinations now. Hong Kong has been resumed. So next to domestic destinations, international destinations, we're also adding actually a lot of new routes. And that's an important factor. So, I mean, as recent as last week, Hyderabad, Colombo, Hyderabad, Singapore. So those are flights. The stations we were already operating, the routes we were not. And Hyderabad, clearly one of our strongholds in the network. We're adding that capacity, and suddenly we see connectivity over Hyderabad. So it's really helping a lot in building that customer proposition.
That's great. Peter, I just want to understand another aspect which we spoke about, which is what are the challenges of working in a really competitive space? We do know that IndiGo and Thales is also working on something similar. You know, pilot fatigue, concerns of pilots have been dominating headlines for a while. And some of them are very, very genuine in terms of either the working hours or the way it's rostered. This device that IndiGo and Thales is working with, what is the idea and the intent behind it? What does it help identify for pilots, and what are you trying to mitigate?
Well, safety for any airline in the world is of paramount importance. And then we look to the planes, and we look to the people who are operating the planes. And on both of them, we should have almost the utmost attention in doing that. And especially with an airline like IndiGo, with a lot of growth, operating in an environment which is sometimes a challenging operating environment, of course we take any of these remarks, suggestions, concerns, we have to take them serious. At the same time, we need to try to get them addressed in the most objective manner. So there's an international framework in terms of what could be pilot hours, working hours. There's a lot of experience. There's a DGCA set of rules. So what we try to do with this measurement is try to see how we can substantiate, how we can make it very much objective and less subjective, some of these elements. And here, again, it's a new feature. It's something which we try. Again, I think it fits to what we feel is a transparent approach and a transparent way of communication. We've been open about it. We have nothing to hide. We would like to actually see if we can take some of these inputs and see where some of the concerns and how we can build on that to improve it.
Perfect. Peter, my last question. This is where I started the interview. I said it's a competitive space, but as we move forward, it's turning into a duopoly between Air India and IndiGo. Now, many experts have pointed out how that can be dangerous going forward. Airlines can, increase prices, their whims and fancies. Do you buy that criticism? Do you think that's an unfair criticism?
I would like to put a few things out there. First of all, it is not a duopoly. There's 2 larger players, and there's still others around, and there's space for others to be. That's one. 2, even in a space where there's 2 larger ones, the 2 larger ones are competing significantly. So that's there. I think thirdly, and that's probably an important thing to keep in mind, all the things we said earlier about building a significant network and building India into a global aviation hub, I come back to an earlier point which I made, and as we should compare ourselves in terms of size to some of the international players. And in that angle, for India, it's probably better to have a couple of bigger ones than to have 15 much smaller ones. And if you see what's happening in the Gulf, if you see what's happening in Southeast Asia and the likes of that international competition, India will develop carriers matching the size and the potential of the country, and the country deserves that really. So my focus is making sure that IndiGo moves forward in that. The consolidation which is taking place, we have seen in other parts of the world taking place in the same fashion. There is space for others to operate, and that's a good and a natural thing. And I think the point I would like to put a lot of attention is how do we make sure that Indian carriers can compete in the international space? Because if we want to build an aviation powerhouse, we should look outside the borders of India, and that really requires airlines of size and scale to do that.
Perfect. Peter, it's always a pleasure speaking to you, not just for how well you are with your numbers and statistics, but your sense of transparency as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and wishing you a wonderful Diwali.
Wishing you the same.
Thank you.